The year was 1415, and the tension between England and France had reached a boiling point that had simmered for decades. Across northern France, armies mobilized, their banners fluttering in the wind as the sun rose on a misty October morning. King Henry V of England, barely 30 years old but already seasoned in the art of leadership, led a force of 6,000 men into enemy territory, weary yet determined. Each soldier carried the weight of expectation, understanding that their small army faced a French force, perhaps 20,000 strong. The French knights, resplendent in armor and emboldened by numbers, were certain that victory would be theirs. Yet Henry, aware of the dangers and the potential, had chosen the battlefield with precision. A narrow strip of land, flanked by woods and riddled with mud, would serve to neutralize the French advantage, funneling their troops into a deadly corridor where discipline and preparation could overcome brute force. The English troops were a mix of experienced infantry and skilled longbowmen, each man knowing his role in the coming battle. The longbowmen flexed their fingers, feeling the tension of the strings beneath calloused hands, while infantrymen adjusted their pikes and swords, readying themselves for the close combat that would inevitably follow. Henry moved among his soldiers, calm and composed, his presence a source of reassurance and authority. Every detail was accounted for: the placement of stakes to repel cavalry, the spacing of troops, the coordination of arrows, and the preparation for enemy maneuvers. The battlefield itself became a tool in Henry's hands, as important as the soldiers who stood ready to fight upon it. As the morning mist lifted, the French began their advance. The sound of trumpets cut through the air, announcing their confidence. Horses snorted and hooves churned mud into thick slurry, heavy armor making momentum difficult. Henry watched carefully as the first lines approached, knowing that the outcome would hinge on the discipline of his soldiers and the deadly accuracy of his archers. Then, in a moment both terrifying and precise, the English longbowmen released their first volley. Arrows arced through the misty sky, striking knights and horses alike, sending the front lines into chaos. The French formations faltered, their momentum broken by the very terrain they had underestimated, and the deadly rain of arrows that met them. The battlefield became a complex dance of strategy and reaction, a clash of planning and instinct that would determine the fate of nations. The clash escalated rapidly as the French attempted to reorganize, pressing forward in fits and starts. Heavy cavalry charges were slowed by the mud and the stakes, while English infantry held firm, exploiting the confusion with disciplined thrusts of sword and pike. Each fallen enemy created obstacles for those behind, compounding the chaos and magnifying the advantage of the English line. Henry moved among his men, a steadying presence in the maelstrom, rallying soldiers and ensuring that the line did not break. The longbowmen continued their relentless volley, striking gaps in armor and taking down any horse that dared press forward. The battlefield was alive with motion, a brutal symphony of steel, mud, and the cries of the wounded. Every soldier caught in a crucible of skill, strategy, and sheer will. French morale began to falter as the hours wore on. Nobles fell one by one, their deaths undermining confidence and leaving command fractured. The English, though outnumbered, maintained cohesion, turning each French assault into a trap. The longbowmen were the most lethal, their arrows cutting through the confusion, disrupting the formation and striking fear into the hearts of those who advanced. The terrain, marshy and narrow, amplified every mistake, every hesitation, ensuring that discipline triumphed over numbers. Henry's strategy was both simple and brilliant. Control the field, force the enemy into disadvantageous positions, and strike with precision where their armor and confidence were weakest. The day became a testament to the power of preparation and the human capacity for endurance in the face of overwhelming odds. Hours passed with relentless intensity. The French, disoriented and exhausted, were forced into repeated charges, each one broken before it could reach the English line. Soldiers fell under the barrage of arrows, while infantrymen pressed forward with relentless precision. Henry's calm authority kept his men focused, ensuring that fear did not fracture their discipline. The battlefield was a maelstrom of mud and steel, but the English line, though battered, held firm. Each arrow, each calculated movement, each disciplined strike reinforced the improbable reality. 6,000 men were standing against 20,000, and they were winning. The French army, reeling from the initial volleys, struggled to regain formation. Their pride, their confidence in the invincibility of their knights, had been shattered within moments. Horses bogged down in mud, armored men stumbling and colliding. The once formidable wave of cavalry began to lose coherence. Henry longbowmen took advantage of every misstep, their arrows piercing armor, cutting down steeds and sowing terror among the remaining ranks. The English infantry, disciplined and relentless, pressed forward, meeting those who survived the barrage with steel and pike, turning the chaos into a controlled, devastating force. Henry, aware that the French would continue to throw men into the fray, maintained his calm and oversight, ensuring that the rhythm of defense and counterattack remained unbroken. Every soldier knew his role, every maneuver executed with precision, honed through training and experience. The French, disoriented and frustrated, made repeated attempts to break through the line, but each assault funneled into narrow channels between stakes and mud, where their advantage in numbers counted for little. The air was thick with the cries of men and the sounds of battle, steel against steel, the shouts of officers, the thud of falling horses and bodies. Each moment of the battle was a test of endurance, courage, and leadership. As the day wore on, the impact of fatigue became evident. The French knights, burdened by their armor and the mud, began to slow, their charges losing power and effectiveness. The English, though tired and bloodied, maintained a cohesion that their enemy could not match. Archers continued to fire with lethal accuracy, picking off those who ventured too far ahead or tried to regroup. Infantrymen pressed forward with unyielding determination, exploiting every flaw, every hesitation in the disorganized French lines. The ground became a treacherous sea of mud, littered with the bodies of fallen men and horses, creating obstacles that only compounded the difficulties for the attackers. Henry's strategy, combining terrain advantage, disciplined defense, and precise offensive actions, turned the numerical superiority of the French into a liability. The French leadership, once confident, now found themselves in crisis. Nobles were captured or slain, units became leaderless, and morale collapsed under the relentless pressure. Henry's army, small yet cohesive, executed every maneuver with clarity and determination. The longbow, which had begun the battle as a simple weapon, now dictated the flow of combat, transforming the battlefield into a deadly landscape for the unprepared. Each volley weakened the enemy further. Each pike thrust and sword swing exploited the confusion. By mid-afternoon, the French army was no longer advancing with purpose. It was struggling to survive. Each attempt to regroup met with precise and punishing resistance. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, signaling the approach of evening, the French began to retreat in disarray. Henry's soldiers, though weary, pursued with calculated determination, capturing key nobles and preventing any meaningful regrouping. The battlefield, once a scene of organized armies poised for combat, had transformed into a chaotic tableau of victory for the English. Mud, blood, and the fallen created a stark contrast to the disciplined force that had withstood impossible odds. Agincourt, already etched into history by the sheer audacity of the English strategy, became a symbol of leadership, discipline, and the power of preparation over overwhelming numerical force. The aftermath of the battle saw the immediate consequences ripple across Europe. Henry V's reputation soared, his name synonymous with brilliance in strategy and valor in leadership. England celebrated a victory that seemed impossible, while France reeled in shock and disbelief. Chroniclers and poets immortalized the day, recounting the bravery of the soldiers, the deadly efficiency of the longbowmen, and the genius of a young king who had turned the odds in his favor. Agincourt reshaped military thinking, proving that ingenuity, discipline, and courage could triumph over overwhelming numbers and heralding a new era in the art of war. The retreating French forces, battered and disorganized, left the battlefield littered with the remnants of their pride and their army. Henry V, ever vigilant, ordered his men to maintain formation and press the advantage without descending into chaos. The English soldiers, though weary, moved methodically, capturing key nobles and ensuring that no organized counterattack could form. The field was a testament to the effectiveness of discipline, preparation, and leadership. Each step across the mud and blood served as a reminder of the immense challenge they had overcome and the strategic genius that had guided them. As evening fell, the full magnitude of the English victory became apparent. 6,000 men had withstood and defeated an army more than 3 times their size. The longbow had proven its lethal potential, each volley reshaping the battlefield and undermining the morale of even the most formidable knights. Henry V's leadership had not only kept his army intact, but had transformed the battle into a showcase of strategy and calculated risk. The English soldiers, though bloodied and exhausted, knew that they had participated in an event that would be remembered for centuries. The aftermath of Agincourt extended beyond the immediate military success. Across England, the victory was celebrated as a national triumph, a demonstration that ingenuity and courage could overcome overwhelming odds. The French, forced to reckon with their overconfidence, faced political and military consequences that resonated long after the battlefield had been cleared. Chronicles, poems, and songs immortalized the bravery of the men and the brilliance of their king, ensuring that the story of Agincourt would endure as both legend and lesson. The battle reshaped tactics and inspired a generation of military thinkers, proving that preparation, leadership, and innovation were as decisive as numbers and brute force. In the weeks and months following the battle, Henry consolidated his gains, securing prisoners, negotiating ransoms, and reinforcing his strategic position in France. The captured nobles became instruments of diplomacy, while the success at Agincourt emboldened English forces for future campaigns. The longbow, previously a simple weapon, became a cornerstone of English military strategy, celebrated for its ability to neutralize cavalry and dominate the battlefield. Agincourt was more than a victory. It was a transformative event that changed the nature of medieval warfare and demonstrated the enduring power of leadership and strategy in shaping the course of history. As the memory of the battle spread, the legend of Agincourt grew. Henry V became emblematic of courage, vision, and unyielding resolve. His soldiers, ordinary men transformed into instruments of extraordinary purpose, were remembered for their discipline, bravery, and sacrifice. The battlefield itself, once the site of unimaginable carnage, became a symbol of the triumph of preparation and unity over chaos and numerical superiority. Agincourt endured not merely as a historical event, but as a story of human potential, where courage, intelligence, and determination forged a legacy that would echo through the centuries. The echoes of the battle reached beyond the immediate aftermath, influencing military thought, leadership studies, and popular imagination. Agincourt became an exemplar of strategic brilliance, a case study in how a small, disciplined force could prevail against overwhelming numbers. The lessons drawn from that October day extended beyond the realm of war, illustrating the power of planning, coordination, and decisive action. For Henry V and his soldiers, the victory was not just tactical, but moral, a reaffirmation of the principles that guided them and a testament to the enduring human capacity to overcome formidable obstacles. The story of Agincourt, etched into memory and history alike, remains a touchstone for understanding courage, leadership, and the transformative potential of strategy under pressure. The sun had dipped low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the battlefield. The air was thick with the smell of earth and blood, the cries of the wounded fading into a heavy silence, broken only by the occasional groan or the flutter of banners still clinging to muddy poles. Henry V rode slowly along the line, surveying the aftermath with a calm resolve, knowing that the battle had tested the limits of endurance, courage, and leadership. The soldiers, their faces smeared with mud and sweat, staggered, yet held their formation, each man aware of the significance of the day. 6,000 men had defied impossible odds and emerged victorious against a vastly superior enemy. The English now moved to secure the battlefield, capturing nobles who had survived the carnage. These prisoners were not only symbols of victory but also valuable political assets, their ransom ensuring financial and diplomatic leverage for England. Henry ensured that discipline was maintained. There would be no plunder or recklessness, no undermining of the hard-won advantage. The soldiers cleaned and reorganized their positions, tending to the wounded and mourning the dead. Each step across the mud carried the weight of triumph and loss, a testament to the human cost of strategy and valor. Across Europe, news of Agincourt traveled swiftly, carried by messengers and chroniclers. Henry's reputation soared, his leadership celebrated as both courageous and brilliant. The battle was studied by military scholars and recounted in poems and songs, each retelling amplifying the legend of the small English force that had triumphed against overwhelming numbers. The longbow, once a simple weapon, was elevated to a symbol of English ingenuity, demonstrating that skill and preparation could offset the mightiest armies. Agincourt reshaped the understanding of warfare, showing that discipline, terrain, and leadership could determine outcomes that sheer numbers alone could not. As days turned to weeks, Henry consolidated his position in northern France, using the victory to strengthen his strategic advantage. Prisoners were ransomed, and the capture of key nobles shifted political dynamics, reinforcing English claims and authority. Soldiers returned to fortifications and supply lines, their experience on the battlefield transforming them into even more effective warriors. The memory of the battle became a rallying point, an example of what could be achieved when courage, strategy, and leadership converged. For the men who fought, Agincourt was a defining moment in their lives, a day of fear, courage, and ultimate triumph. The battlefield itself, though cleared of fighting men, bore permanent witness to the ferocity of the encounter. Mud, blood, and broken armor marked every step of the victorious army, a living record of the calculated genius and perseverance that had brought them through. Stories of individual acts of heroism emerged, soldiers who had held the line against superior forces, archers whose precision had turned the tide, and leaders who had inspired courage in the face of despair. These narratives humanized the strategic brilliance, showing that behind every maneuver and arrow lay the determination and bravery of men willing to face impossible odds. As the immediate aftermath settled, the legacy of Agincourt began to take root in history. Henry V's leadership, the effectiveness of the longbow, and the resilience of his soldiers were remembered as milestones in military history. The battle demonstrated the transformative power of preparation, courage, and strategy, leaving an indelible mark on the conduct of war and the collective memory of Europe. Agincourt was not only a triumph of arms, but a testament to the capacity of human resolve to overcome even the most formidable challenges, a story that would endure through centuries as both lesson and legend. The weeks and months following Agincourt saw the ripples of its impact spread far beyond the battlefield. Henry V capitalized on the momentum, consolidating English positions and reinforcing his army with renewed morale. The captured nobles were ransomed, strengthening England's coffers and diplomatic leverage, while the victories on the field cemented Henry's reputation as a commander of unmatched strategic acumen. Across Europe, The story of the small English force defeating a much larger French army became the stuff of legend, inspiring not only admiration, but also careful study by military leaders who sought to understand how discipline, strategy, and courage could overcome overwhelming numbers. The soldiers who had fought at Agincourt returned to their garrisons and villages with tales that would become part of England's collective memory. Their experiences on the battlefield, from the relentless volleys of arrows to the brutal hand-to-hand clashes, were etched into the identity of the army and the nation. Chroniclers documented acts of heroism and the deadly efficiency of the longbow, elevating ordinary men to legendary status. The battlefield itself, cleared of its immediate carnage, remained a symbol of human determination and tactical brilliance. Each arrow loosed, each stance held, and every command executed with precision contributed to a victory that seemed impossible when the day began. Henry's leadership became a benchmark for future generations. His ability to maintain discipline, inspire courage, and exploit the environment showcased the qualities that define great commanders. Agincourt illustrated that leadership is not merely about giving orders, but about understanding the potential and limits of those under one command, turning individual skill into collective triumph. The lessons of terrain usage, coordination between archers and infantry, and psychological pressure on the enemy became standard study in military theory. Agincourt was a lesson not only in combat, but in human resilience, ingenuity, and the orchestration of complex elements under stress. Over time, Agincourt was immortalized in literature, art, and public memory. The bravery of the men, the deadly precision of the longbow, and the strategic genius of Henry V were celebrated and romanticized. But underlying every story was the reality of courage under fire and the human cost of victory. Soldiers who had faced impossible odds became heroes, and their sacrifices a reminder of the discipline and commitment required to achieve greatness. The battlefield itself became hallowed ground, a testament to the capacity of a small, determined force to shape the destiny of nations. The impact of Agincourt extended beyond military strategy into the cultural and political consciousness of Europe. France reeled from the defeat, re-evaluating its approach to warfare and leadership, while England experienced a surge of confidence and prestige. The longbow, once a simple weapon, became emblematic of tactical ingenuity, a reminder that technological mastery and skilled execution could redefine engagements regardless of size disparity. Agincourt transformed the perception of war, elevating the understanding that preparation, discipline, and intelligent leadership could achieve what sheer numbers could not. Ultimately, Agincourt 1415 endures as a story of courage, strategy, and human determination. It serves as a testament to the extraordinary potential of individuals and groups when guided by vision, leadership, and resolve. Henry V and his soldiers became immortal not just through victory, but through the way they exemplified the power of preparation, skill, and unwavering courage. The day remains a cornerstone of history, reminding all who study it that even against overwhelming odds, strategic brilliance and human will can forge a triumph that resonates through centuries, shaping the narrative of nations and inspiring generations to come.